Kyle Agre with Brewer Agre Outdoors, and today I wanted to share just a couple of tips on bottom bouncing. And this is an approach that allows us to cover water, cover structure, and move at a fairly fast pace. And the advantage of that is, of course, if we don't know the spot where these fish are located, we can search an area rather than a specific, dot on the map, and we can find where those fish might be. For instance, an entire riprap shoreline that might extend for a half mile or a mile in length. We don't know where those fish are going to be holding up. We can troll along the edge of that with bottom bouncers, spinners, and leeches or crawlers, and a lot of times we'll find out where those fish are at. We can then decide whether we want to continue bottom bouncing, or sometimes what we'll do is we'll even anchor up in that spot. We know there's fish there, and we'll throw out slip bobbers and fish them a little bit slower. But as we look at the bottom bouncer technique, we really like to use a bait casting reel. It's not to say you can't use a spinning rod and a spinning reel to bottom bounce. That's not the case at all. But the advantage in our mind as we use these bait casters is that we're going to choose a bait caster that has a flip and switch. And a flip and switch allows you to disengage the spool and let out more line simply by pushing the button. And then by letting the button up again, it locks that spool in place. So in other words, we don't have to stop every time we let out a foot of line or 6 inches of line and re-engage the reel to make it click and lock in place again. May seem like a little thing, but as you're spending all day on the water with this bottom bouncer rod and reel in your hand, it does make a difference if you're in an area where the depth does vary. And it makes it easier to explore a little bit between different depths as well as you're out there driving your boat. Monofilament line, we'll look at probably an 8, 10, or 12 pound monofilament. We really like the XT or extra tough monofilament just because it is a little bit more abrasive resistance, and we get a little more life out of it that way. So as far as our rod and reel, 6.5, 7 foot rod, that's going to work great. We've got it spooled up with monofilament line. On the other end here, what we'll do is we'll tie on a bottom bouncer. You can use a safety pin style bottom bouncer, or we like the wing it bottom bouncers because they're easy to switch out sizes. And as we talk about weights and sizes, the rule of thumb is going to be about an ounce every 10 feet. So that gets you close, and from there you can kind of adjust based on your speed what weight you want to be using. And that bottom bouncer is going to act to hold our presentation and our lure close to the bottom, where we are going to have the biggest percentage chance of finding those walleyes or pike or whatever we're after. So we're going to troll along typically 1.5 miles an hour. It's not out of the question to go as high and fast as 2 miles an hour, and pull that bait along. Recommended that we don't necessarily drag the bottom bouncer on the bottom, but rather use it to feel where the bottom is. So in other words, drop your rod back, feel that weight touch the bottom, and then lift it back up again. And that oftentimes is going to be our best approach to keeping the bait in the zone, but not digging up a big cloud of silt down on the bottom either. So bottom bouncing technique works great. It's easy to do, and it can put a heck of a lot of fish in the boat.